Well, so you've read the title. This is quite definitely the biggest Guild Wars 2 news we've had since the announcement of End of Dragons. That was a long time ago now, and maybe even, I would dare to say, this could be bigger news than the expansion itself. They've announced a lot of stuff here. Many of us have been wondering if they really care about Guild Wars 2 and are just pushing for a Guild Wars 3 after the next expansion, especially what with it titled End of Dragons. Well, today we had a blog post that seems to suggest they are looking at the game long term. There's a ton of stuff to dive through, so go get yourself a cup of tea or coffee or whatever. We'll go through the blog post point by point, and I'll tell you guys where I think it's significant, or for some of it, honestly, maybe not so significant. We'll see. Footage in the background will probably be some stuff from the new Living World Season 3 replay running around Bloodstone Fen, just because, hey, why not? So here's what they say, the ArenaNet studio update for July 2021. We do open with some new concept art from the expansion, and in fact, I won't spoil it just yet, but later down, there is a screenshot of Cantha itself in-game. That's kind of what they cap out with, and I guess I'll do it all in order. So they open by saying, hey everyone, I'm Ruby Bear, and you may already know me as the host of Guild Chat and other Guild Wars 2 live streams. That's the most visible part of what I do, but as a member of the community team, I swap job attunements regularly behind the scenes. The rest of the community team and I have been working with the development team to improve our ongoing communication with you all. Your reaction to our recent Summer 2021 blog post, the weekly event schedules, and skill and balance previews confirm we're on the right track. Continuing that trend, we have some important updates to share with you today. It's interesting to me they open this way because skill and balance previews have been going on for a long time. The like roadmaps they've been doing have been going on for a long time. I mean, maybe they're a little bit more detailed now, but hey, I didn't really think that was a new trend. Anyway, here's JT to get us started. Who is JT, you may be wondering? A brief preamble. Hey everybody, please allow me to introduce myself. I'm JT, and I lead the Guild Wars franchise. So this is a person and a role that the studio has always been cagey about, and today, finally, they're talking about this person. And I lead ArenaNet. I've been a director at the studio for a little over 6 years. ArenaNet's different. It's unlike any place I've ever been a part of. I'm honored to be a part of this game team and community. When I stepped into this role, I thought a lot about what we've done well and what we still needed to do. So let's talk a bit about when he may have stepped into the role. Of course, the previous bigwig guy we knew in charge was Mike O'Brien. He was the last of the 3 company founders who was overseeing the game pretty much through the Path of Fire era, Season 4, and then the Icebreed Saga. Well, if you've been keeping up to date with the franchise, you'll know that Mike O isn't there anymore. Seems to have been quietly pushed out, maybe. He's actually over at his own new studio called Manaworks now. Additionally, there's another Mike, that's Mike Z. He was our previous game director, and he too, quietly, there was no announcement really, the community kind of had to sleuth it out and dig for it, found out that he had sort of silently left. Since that time, the community's been in a really dour place, and I'm talking about a pretty long window here, where we really don't know who's calling the shots at ArenaNet. Is it just purely an NCSoft dictated shell of a studio now that really doesn't get to call any interesting shots? Are they just pushing the gem store and running the whole thing into the ground? Why do we not really have any communication or sense of who's in charge and what's happening? Well, that changes today. JT goes on to say that the retrospection took him back to the studio's earliest days. ArenaNet was founded with the goal of pursuing innovation by focusing on solving player problems first. Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2 are direct results of this pursuit. It's essential that this player-first approach is at the heart of everything we do going forward. Anyone who's been following my coverage will be more than familiar with how much I've ranted recently that new ArenaNet of today doesn't feel very kindred to old ArenaNet, because old ArenaNet was always trying to tackle problems, being brave about pushing boundaries and shaking up the MMO space, and we haven't seen that very much in the recent years. Today, we'll be sharing some important updates about our upcoming expansion, End of Dragons, the live game, and some changes we're making to realign ourselves with the ideals that shaped the franchise from the beginning. I believe that the best is yet to come for Guild Wars 2. So that's fantastic for me to hear, music to my ears, and a real sign that they are going long term, not just with the Guild Wars franchise you'll see here, Guild Wars 2. This community, this game. So, all good so far. Some interesting news now that I kind of take positively, but I think a lot of people won't like much. Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons. As expansion development has progressed, and the real-world challenges of the past year, COVID, namely, and a half, have changed the way we live and work, it's become clear we need a little more time to deliver our creative vision for Cantha. As a result, we're delaying the release of Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons from late 2021 to early 2022. We appreciate your patience as we take the time to give the expansion the attention it deserves. I'm incredibly proud of the work the team is doing to bring Cantha to life, and we can't wait for you to see and experience it for yourselves. Don't forget to tune in on July 27th for the live stream. So they'd already told us there was going to be a big live stream showing a ton of the game off. I think for many of us, we were wondering, wow, is that going to be a release date? Is that going to be beta? Looks like probably not. The actual game is coming out later than we thought. I don't really remember when the original quote that it was definitely a 2021 release is from. Maybe the original teaser way back in 2020. But they are pushing it. Now, if you know me, you know I want them to have as much time as possible. I want the expansion to be as good as possible, because these are some of the few fleeting moments where this franchise gets to appeal to ex-players and totally new players and really build up some great word of mouth and some great marketing. I need these things to be as good as possible. And in many ways, I've been looking at End of Dragons as similar to Heart of Thorns, where like the studio has a ton of whiplash and they're just crunched and trying to push it out too fast. And Heart of Thorns felt constrained in many ways. I don't want End of Dragons to feel constrained. I want it to be brilliant. So the fact that they're delaying it, I think is fine. For you personally though, a lot of you guys I think are going to look at this news and you're going to say, well look, I'm not that interested in Guild Wars at the moment. I've not been that focused. I was maybe going to come back with the expansion and now it's even later away. I guess I'll just forget about it for even longer now. And maybe that will do some damage. I'm personally quite hopeful here though. And this also, by the way, means that they're still doing a live stream with a ton of information about the X-Pack, even though the X-Pack is like months and months away, over half a year away. That means we could be into the Heart of Thorns press style situation, which for me on YouTube is pretty goddamn good. It means that I'll have a lot of news to give you guys, and you know, I think that will be a step up from what they did with Path of Fire. So yeah, a delay with End of Dragons. How long it's going to be, I don't know. They say they planned late 2021, and now it's early 2022. So what does that mean realistically? They were going to do November, and now they're going to do February? So they've bought themselves an extra 4 months or so? Who knows? Next, we have another bit of news, which I think you can take as either a really positive thing or as kind of a meh thing. A familiar face returns. A large part of my job, remember this is still JT speaking, is planning for the future. We have some big plans in store for Guild Wars 2, and ambitious plans require ambitious leaders. I knew I needed a partner to help share the load in order for us to achieve our long-term goals and deliver the game experiences you deserve. I needed someone who intimately understood the franchise and, most importantly, our players. With that, I'm thrilled to announce that former Guild Wars 2 game director Colin Johansson has returned to ArenaNet to help co-lead the studio with me. All aboard. Take it away, Colin. Another blog post is going to be coming from him. So yeah, Colin is back, and I think a lot of people are going to be really excited about this one. For those that you don't know, Colin is a really old school, you know, original Guild Wars Prophecies release dev. He built most of the quests for Prophecies, particularly I remember reading a story about him coming in and they really didn't have many side quests, and he just kind of churned a ton of those out. He did a lot of good bonus mission pack stuff. I specifically recall in the later days of Eye of the North, worked a ton on Guild Wars 2, and right around Heart of Thorns, he actually left the studio. You might remember me doing a big funny video about it at the time where I played a sappy, sad song. He went to work for Amazon, which is in the same area as ArenaNet, presumably pays a hell of a lot more. This was actually the fate of several ArenaNet devs that got siphoned off over there. And particularly, Colin was working on a game called Crucible. Crucible that I covered a bit in the early years and then really kind of started to fall out of love with. Crucible had a bungled, botched, quick release right around the start of the pandemic, and all these games were getting really big as people were staying indoors and playing a ton of them. But Crucible didn't do very well, and eventually Amazon axed it. Since that game has been axed, it looks like ArenaNet has taken Colin back. So, of course, it's really exciting to see someone who does have an intimate knowledge of the franchise returning. And let's be clear, he's not necessarily just a game director here. He's co-running the studio. Remember how I said that once upon a time, ArenaNet had 3 people, you know, in the big chair, so to speak, 3 leaders, and eventually that boiled down to just 1? Well, now they're back to 2. It's JT and Colin right up at the top, so he's in even more of a prominent position than I think he ever had been before. And if you're a big fan of the guy and his work, then cool, this could be a good sign for the game. I would encourage people to, you know, temper their enthusiasm on this one though. You know, I said it when Colin left, and I'll use the exact same logic now. He's just one guy. I don't really like this thing where we push so much emphasis and celebrity and focus on like one person who gets all of the praise or all of the blame. You know, it's a big studio with like over 100 people. Christ knows how many hands work on any particular feature. So I don't necessarily idolize him just for being in that position. I think think proof will be in the pudding. Are we actually going to see a lot of new fun and interesting new initiatives go on or not? Just because it's Colin, to me, if I'm being really honest, it doesn't really mean anything. All that said, let's move on to his part of the blog post. Choo choo! Hello Guild Wars community, Colin here. I'm incredibly excited to be returning to ArenaNet. When I decided to leave the studio in 2016, it was one of the hardest decisions I've made in my career. I spent over 11 years working on the franchise as a game designer and director. One of the first projects I ever worked on at ArenaNet was building a quest where you helped a little girl named Gwen find her lost flute. And the last project was leading the team through pre-production on Path of Fire. Guild Wars, this community, and the team at ArenaNet hold a deep place in my heart, and returning feels like coming home for me. You know, it's funny, he was away for half a decade. That's a long goddamn time. And yeah, what's really happened with Guild Wars in the meantime? He did pre-production on Path of Fire, and we're still in the Path of Fire era. I mean, if that really doesn't drive home how much time we've been with POF, I don't know what does. When JT reached out about the opportunity to help lead the studio with him, we spent a lot of time talking Guild Wars, its future, our interests in driving a renewed focus on our players. Bringing the player perspective into our development process is a huge part of what made Guild Wars a successful franchise from the beginning. Before we launched Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2, we opened them up to public testing to gather feedback and make improvements. After they went live, we evaluated your feedback and your actions in the game, and we used that data to make a better experience for our community. We want to keep improving in this area in the future. Talking's the easy part, it's what you do that matters, so let's talk about a concrete step we're taking to improve on this front. Guild Wars 2 is big and complex with a lot of unique game experiences, including Living World, World vs. World, PvP, Endgame PvE, and more. Traditionally, the game director has had their attention split between overseeing the development of the live game and expansions. To ensure the live game is getting the attention it deserves, JT and I have created a new role that's focused on leading development strategy for the live game and ensuring that we're giving you a consistent, quality experience. We felt that it was important that we found someone for the role who knew the franchise in and out and is a tireless advocate for players. So I'm pleased to announce that Josh Davis, aka Grouch, has rejoined the team as the head of operations. So then we move over to Grouch. So this is another old name. You know, if just on principle, I'm lukewarm about Colin's return because I don't think we should idolize individuals, I'm even more lukewarm about Josh. Just like Colin, this is a guy who's been away for half a decade, jumped ship to look at Crucible, except his start with this game really is just a Guild Wars 2 thing. He's much newer. He was actually a PvP caster that ended up getting hired, much loved by the PvP community as it was back then. I don't know how many people are really still around at this point, but once at the studio, did a ton of different things. You know, I remember him specifically from like Balance live streams. I remember the specialization update in anticipation for the release of Heart of Thorns. Had him on stream for ages and ages and ages trying to go through all of the changes and all the exciting new traits and stuff. He had a big focus on balance. I actually look at some of those patches as very damaging in retrospect and the power creep, but they were exciting times. And I think that, again, this is a name that longtime fans have reason to be excited about. And he's essentially, it seems, going to be the game director now. They've got this new job, and he'll be really, more than Colin maybe even, the one that we interface most with and is really looking at how Living World works and stuff. So that's like a huge position. I'm actually amazed that it's him, someone who hasn't been there for half a decade, who's in this role, and not someone else who's, you know, really followed the struggles of the Icebrood saga, of Season 4, of Season 3. These are really the things that I think you have to be there for and properly analyze to know where you're not going to make the same mistakes that the studio's just done for half a decade. Very curious about this one, both positions really, and what this means for the future. I mean, on the one hand, it's exciting. On the other hand, I do find myself wondering a little bit. You know, these are two guys in really prominent places right now that haven't been around for half a decade. And let's face it, if Crucible didn't flop, would they even be here? So anyway, enough cynical, cold-hearted doom and gloom. Josh says, hi, reporting for duty. Bridging the gap between players and developers is a passion of mine. It's a part of why and how I got into the industry to begin with. When JT and Colin asked me to be interested in rejoining the studio to help recenter our development efforts on players, I couldn't possibly say no. I'm stoked to partner with such a talented team of developers to write the next chapter of Guild Wars 2's story. It's been an eventful couple of months for the team, starting with the summer 2021 blog post we published back in April. It's a little nerve-wracking to publish detailed release notes that far in advance. Game development can be a little unpredictable at times, but in general, I believe the benefits outweigh the risks, and we intend to push for this level of communication as much as we can going forward. It's new territory for ArenaNet, but we're excited about this direction. Look, to me, I don't really care about having specific dates on the concepts that you're running with. I just want to know what those concepts are, and I want a bit more candor about when those concepts do well and when they don't do well. That's the kind of communication I think that ArenaNet fails at. Roadmaps and shackling yourselves to specific, you know, hardline dates, I don't know is really that necessary. He says, in addition to the Living World return, that roadmap announced some major additions coming to the game this summer, namely the Twisted Marionette, the Legendary Armory. We prioritize these features because we know they're important to you. You've told us as much. With that in mind, we'd like to give you 2 more long-awaited updates that we know are important to many of you. And as you guys know, I've criticized the Armory many times, but that's actually coming very, very soon. Then they talk about alliances. When? This year. Now, this is a bit of a bomb. Alliances have been, like, on the back burner, and they've not been talking about for years now. Well, here it is, 2021 Alliances. World Restructuring is a feature that aims to deliver a more balanced world versus world experience by dynamically creating matchups using world versus world designated guilds. Alliances, player-made collections of guilds, and active world versus world players as the inputs. This is in comparison to the current system that relies on worlds and world linking. The system will give us more flexibility and granularity when creating new matches to help us address natural fluctuations in population over time. It will also give players more agency in choosing who they want to play with on an ongoing basis. World Restructuring is a big change to World vs. World. We want to get it right. We've read a lot of your feedback on the system, thousands of posts over the years. It's clear that there isn't a total consensus on how the feature should work, and that's okay. It's a big fundamental change to how the mode works, and that can be daunting. In the past, we've sometimes made the mistake of releasing the final version of a feature and finding that it didn't quite meet your expectations, meaning we wasted time and resources. To avoid this, we're going to do things a little differently this time and make sure that your voice can help inform the development of World Restructuring. You know, they say like they don't do this in the past, but they have done betas in the past. You know, Edge of the Mist, for example, to take a very precise World versus World example, did have a beta and so on. I think they've always understood that about this format. World Restructuring features will be released in a multi-phase beta. What this means is that we'll release a part of the World Restructuring system, test it with you in the live game, gather your feedback, and then iterate on it for a future release. The feature components will be functional but not fully polished, meaning we can more easily react to your feedback without having to rewrite a bunch of code. Once we've worked with you to lock down the design and implementation, we'll polish it up, take it out of beta. We'll be back in August, so that's next month, obviously, with the start of July already, to share an overview of how World Restructuring works and the timing of the first beta events. Our communication regarding this feature over the last few years missed the mark. He's totally right about that. In the past, development priorities shifted away from World vs. World, and unfortunately both World Restructuring and our players suffered as a result. Our new leadership team views World vs. World as a cornerstone mode of Guild Wars 2, and it will be a focus of ours going forward. Now, this is something tangible that really means something to me. I do think for years and years and years, Guild Wars is kind of like a game of a trinity, right? It's World vs. World, PvP, and PvE. And for years and years and years, the focus has not been even enough across all 3 of those formats. If these guys are pledging to really treat it as the cornerstone that it is, I think that means an awful lot. And that's an example as well, I think, of the real kind of communication I'd like to see eventually the studio can offer, you know, to get to a place sophisticated enough where they don't just talk to us about when projects are being prioritized, but when the dynamic between studio and user base is sophisticated enough that they can even tell us when things are being deprioritized, as often happens, but it's always quiet, hush hush. I think really that would be the most exciting future to me. But I don't know whether the community's, mature enough to handle that kind of information. We'll see. Next, another big announcement. Now, this one actually excites me more than most of what else they've said so far. Client performance optimization. We've heard you loud and clear. Guild Wars 2 needs better frame rates. We agree. We're actively working on upgrading our engine to DirectX 11, and we expect to be able to roll it out in an opt-in beta later this year. An important note is that the upgrade to DirectX 11 itself isn't a magical fix to frame rates on its own. Some people may not notice a difference at all. However, upgrading opens a lot of doors for improving performance, like CPU multi-threading, for instance. It also paves the way for some potential graphics updates down the road. We're investing in our infrastructure, engine, and graphics because we're looking to the future. This is a long-term effort. Now, that to me screams Guild Wars 2 is really going the distance. They want this thing to look and feel and mean something fresh, you know, way out in 2025, 2027, and beyond. And getting up to DirectX 11 is a big step there. I think some of you guys might be wondering why not DirectX 12. I was wondering that too. Before shooting this video, I tried to read a little bit about the difference in their capabilities. It seems like DirectX 12 has a lot more multi-threading and utilization of other core possibilities. DirectX 11 isn't quite as far ahead as 12 is. And isn't the community-made initiative mod DirectX 12? So I'm kind of wondering why why we're going to 11 and not something further. But I've got to be honest, you know, details about that are way out of my ballpark of what the hell I'm talking about. So if you guys have got any thoughts in the comments down below, let me have them. I do think that this is one of those updates. They've said to us for years that it really won't matter that much. They're even saying it now, but I'm still really excited for, and I think a lot of other people will be. All right, and finally, they close out. Until next time, they got a nice collage of lots of different devs here, obviously all working from home in isolation. I particularly enjoy the guy with the Super Adventure Fox background there. We're very excited for the rest of 2021. We can't wait to celebrate with you on July 27th during the Guild Wars 2 End of Dragon's First Look live stream, and I will be covering that, of course, on my channel, guys. We're going to be rolling into this all month, and look at the stuff they've got. We've got a new trailer, feature reveals, and information, news about Elite Specialization beta events. So we may even be getting those in the nearer future than you'd expect. The expansion itself delayed, but we'll get those. Details about story and character. Well, you kind of already know that if you're following, you know, some of the news I dropped yesterday about a dev that was writing on Reddit. Art, event design, and more. We're going to make sure that you have many secrets to discover when you visit Cantha yourself. So while we won't be spoiling things, we still have lots to share between now and release. We plan more for End of Dragons live streams through the rest of 2021, and they'll each bring you more news about the expansion. This looks like Heart of Thorn style press to me, and I'm pretty thrilled about it. Our community is the lifeblood of all we do. Thank you for being a part of it. Ruby, JT, Colin, Josh, and the entire ArenaNet team. And here's your screenshot of Cantha itself. Looks like Xingji. Actually, remarkably, looks kind of close to some of the earlier concept art we got with the original teaser announcement. Looks pretty gorgeous. I'll probably go into this more on my next daily podcast, End of Dragons Daily. These are just kind of my preliminary thoughts. Give me any of your feedback down below, and we'll discuss, you know, we'll really unpack some of this stuff. It's a post with a lot of information in it that I think the community will blow out of proportion, but overall, is really a great sign for Guild Wars 2, and it has definitely changed my perspective on what I think they're actually doing with this game, and given me more hope that this is the place to be, and this is a serious product that we really should be looking at. And I think that's, above everything else, what they really needed to communicate, and I think that's what they've managed to do. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Let me know down below. I'll be watching the comments very closely. I'll see you next time.